So, have you ever had a fictional character that's made you go all, oh, you're just like me. You're just like me for real! That, my friends, is basically what kinning is. In a nutshell, of course. To go into more actually territory, kinning refers to the act of identifying as a fictional character. This mostly happens because of how much you relate to this specific character due to factors that are mostly based on their character writing, like their lore, backstory, or personality, for instance. This is not to be confused with the concept of other kinnies, or fiction kins, or whatever those are called. That is a whole nother can of worms I do not want to open today, okay? Nor do I have the sufficient knowledge to speak on any of those topics, ever. But anyways, if you've ever been in a fandom, or, well, you don't really have to even be in one. Even if you're just chilling by the outskirts of a fandom, you've definitely heard someone say something along the lines of, I'm an insert character here, Kinnie. Me personally? Of course I've had my fair share of those as well. I'm still a Futaba Kinnie, by the way. See, I'm one of y'all. Someone unlock this thing and let me out! Testicular manslaughter my ass! If you take a closer look though, you'll see that most fandoms that are involved in kinning culture are fandoms that are built upon a mostly teenage demographic. For instance, by researching for this video and just searching the word kinning up, the main fandoms that pop up on Google with frequent discussions about kinning include Danganronpa, Project Sekai, and Genshin Impact, which are all gaming fandoms geared towards teenagers. Now I would naturally draw the conclusion that, okay, maybe this is because teenagers tend to be more impressionable and are shown to be more emotionally attached to media in comparison to adults. Or, this could be because of the difficulties with emotional regulation due to various struggles that may present themselves in the average teenager's life, such as the awkward transitions between life states, from a child to a tween to a soon-to-be adult. Heck, school-related issues are especially a handful. I know when I was in middle to high school, there was a lot of pressure to conform to society and change yourself just to be able to fit in and have friends. Not to mention the academic pressure, whether it be from your peers or your parents. It felt as though no matter which direction you tried to run towards, there would always be someone at the end of the tunnel expecting something from you in the end. Yeah, a teenager goes through a lot. Trust me, I've been there. But even with all that in mind, maybe the incentive to kin isn't purely driven by a silly teenager's lack of emotional connection with their surroundings. Perhaps, as I have mentioned before, the character's writing itself also plays a way bigger part in all of this. Huh. That's it. Exhibit A! Character writing. Remember those fandoms I mentioned earlier? Let's take a step back and truly explore the characters that are within those stories, shall we? Don't worry, I'll make it brief, so I won't take up too much of your precious time, hopefully. Project Sekai is a game franchise that consists of 20 original characters. Every original character in the Project Sekai universe are teenagers who deal with average teenage life struggles like friendship problems, and more friendship problems. They're all divided into 5 different musical groups that contain 4 characters each. To put it simply, firstly you have the school band, the girly pop idol group, the yo cool hip hop street gangsters, the theater nerds, and lastly you have the emo kids. I'll let you have a guess at which groups make up the most kinnies. No, wait, scratch that. You don't need time to think. It's very obviously the emo kids and the theater nerds. Who would have guessed? Oh yeah, and that one guy from the hip-hop group who likes to appear nonchalant but can also be easily irritated and has an inferiority complex and sometimes anger management issues on top of that? Huh. That sounds like most of my classmates back in junior high. Now, to make it somewhat fair, a lot of the points I'll be making, ironically, might not apply to the actual most kin character from this franchise, for one obvious reason. This is Akiyama Mizuki, who, as far as I'm aware, is canonically transgender. Or is, at the very least, heavily implied to be transgender. Now, trans rep is not exactly prevalent in mainstream media, or, when it is, it's not really given the best treatment. So I think the reason for Mizuki having a lot of Kinnies is basically a given. With that aside, let's look at a different character by the name of Asahina Mafiu. I'll give you a brief rundown of her qualities according to the Project Sekai fandom. You're a burnt-out gifted kid who puts on a facade, faking your personality so that nobody suspects that you're actually a shell of who you once were. You've lost all hope of being saved from the crushing weight of society's expectations, and all you are is just really freaking tired. Now that's pretty extreme, but it's also pretty in line with my hypothesis earlier, huh? Most of a Project Sekai character's traits can be watered down to several bullet points. Not to say the characters are poorly written in any way, but they're also not necessarily overly complex either. Even though many characters may have overlapping character traits, and well, that's only natural for a franchise with this many characters of the same age range operating in mostly the same usual everyday settings. Anyways, the point that I'm trying to make here is that all of the original characters in Project Sekai are relatively straightforward with their stories. Stories are packed in an easily digestible way with little inference needed most of the time, which ultimately makes it easy for us, the viewers, the consumers, to understand and relate to these characters. Okay, well, moving past an ordinary cast of teenagers that very obviously panders to the average teenage audience, we now take a look at an unordinary cast of teenagers that somehow manages to attract the wrong audience. Danganronpa is a multi-part series that features high school students who are forced into killing games. Yes, very brutal. Teenagers love brutal things. Unlike Project Sekai, the personalities of each character in Danganronpa feel more substantial and are many times directly impacted by the very story-driven narrative. Given that Danganronpa is already a fully established video game franchise, while Project Sekai is really just a gacha rhythm game adding stories to pad out the game's live service runtime for as long as it can stay up. The Danganronpa character that undoubtedly has most Kinnies in a chokehold is none other than Kokichi Oma. Surprise, surprise. If you've ever been in any fandom space for more than 3 seconds, I can assure you, you've definitely heard of this character. You've seen this guy somewhere. I'm sure of it. Notorious for either being an absolute mess of a quote-unquote poorly written character or being the poster child for 2020 alt-scene TikTok kids, I'll give you a general idea of the fan interpretation for this little gremlin. Take a look at this. I found this Kokichi Oma Kinnie bingo online when I was researching. How fun. Let's go over this, shall we? Doesn't know how to make friends, tells dark jokes, fake smiling all the time, intelligent, feeling emotions, tell a joke, sees through fake people. Okay, this goes on and on, but okay, you get the gist of it already. That was a pain to read. And you know what else also shoddily attempts at a portrayal of being morally gray, only to completely fall face flat onto the ground mere moments after? Of course, it's the average teenager's rebellious tendencies. As a part of growing up, a desire for independence manifests as the prefrontal cortex continues to develop. As a result of exploring and attempting to build an identity that separates them from being a mere child of their parents, teenagers are of course drawn towards what I can only call, well, edginess. Trying to put on a tough act to seem cool and constantly doing things that you're not told to do. From the two examples I have presented to you all, we can now clearly see the relationship that specific character writing has to do with the amount of Kinnies that they're getting. TLDR, if you want to write a character that gets the most Kinnies ever, just take yourself from when you were in junior high and make yourself into an OC and publish that online. Now you have all the teenagers fawning over them and wanting to be them. Just kidding, don't do that, you'll start a revolution. Well, in the end, some people just gain gratification from kinning and relating to fictional characters, and that's just all there is to it. Sometimes when you're lonely or when you're surrounded by people in real life who are all vastly different and you feel like you're unable to connect, or when you feel as though none of them are truly able to understand you on a deeper level, kinning can be a great method of release. In many cases, kinning can make people feel recognized in times when it feels like they're never given the attention to just be themselves. And in my opinion, that's a perfectly fine defense mechanism. Even if some people may call it cringe or childish, if this method of coping is able to make people feel better, then I'm all for it. However, there is still a line that shouldn't be crossed even in this regard. To be completely honest, it's undeniable to me that kinning lies mostly on the basis of projection. As a result, many extreme kinnies tend to lose sight of their own selves, and I'm not only talking about integrating parts of the character's personality to be a part of your own, but also basing your daily routines on how the characters act in fiction, but there are also some people out there who may take this whole kinning fiesta onto a whole nother level. They may actually believe that they are the character in real life, or, claim that they have past memories of once existing in said character's shoes. I don't want to bash or send hate to groups I don't necessarily agree with, so I really won't dabble into the psychology of what's going on in that regard, because quite honestly, all this kin culture researching has been already giving me a massive headache due to how surprisingly niche it is in the grand scheme of things. But maybe sometimes it's better to not take things too seriously, and if the kinning gets too extreme to the point where you actually feel disconnected from reality, or somehow it ends up hurting yourself, in that case maybe it's better to see an actual medical professional or a licensed therapist. But let me know what you guys think, and if you have any other ideas on what I should research further, let me know again. And until next time, remember to kin in moderation. See ya, folks.